I'm Simon Rafe and welcome to Brown Bag Bible Study, the Bible study that you can do in your lunch break. Now this is an introduction to Scripture. It'll give you some information you might not have known, it'll encourage you to read the Bible, but most importantly, it's presented in bite-sized pieces, perfect to fit in with our busy lifestyles, no matter how little time you have. Every week I will concentrate on a small part of Scripture, either one of the 73 books of the Bible or a group of related books, and I'll bring you interesting facts and information to help you understand it. There's also going to be links to further reading, articles, books, magazines, podcasts, videos, what have you. They're going to help you learn to love sacred Scripture even more. This week, the first example of a papal encyclical, St. Peter's first letter. Of course, when Peter wrote this letter, they didn't call them papal encyclicals, and the church didn't have a media machine to send them to the various dioceses or have them published in newspapers or on the Vatican website. Equally, however, there wasn't a cadre of dissenting media theologians ready to reinterpret the words of the Pope into some falsehood, so perhaps that balances out. In any case, this letter is widely considered to have been written by Peter when he was in Rome, which puts the date in the early 60s AD. The author identifies himself as Peter, and in closing he says he is writing from Babylon. Now some scholars suggest Peter is writing from the city in the Middle East, but most scholars recognize that Babylon was a code phrase for Rome. Rome was the great city, centre of the powerful empire the Jews were living in, and it was a centre of depravity and pagan power. In the Jewish historical experience, this was Babylon, the capital of the Babylonian Empire, who had captured the Jews in 587 BC and held them during the Babylonian captivity until they were released by Cyrus the Great of Persia. Now, you might get some Protestants who argue Peter was never in Rome, seeking to discredit the papacy by this, and so I've included some resources to help you defend Peter's Roman residency, there in the additional reading. Some scholars have maintained the letter is unlikely to have been written by the relatively uneducated Peter. He was a fisherman whose Galilean accent, an accent of a somewhat backward area of Palestine, was so strong he was recognised by it during Holy Week. The reason they say this is because the Greek is very good in this letter. To this charge, one simply needs to turn to the end of the letter, where it's made clear that Peter's letter has been dictated to Silvanus, his secretary. Obviously, like any good assistant, Silvanus has corrected his boss's errors and produced a well-written piece. This does not detract from Peter's authorship in any way. The letter is addressed to the Christians in Asia Minor, although the content of the letter is applicable to all Christians, which likely explains its inclusion in the canon. It makes frequent reference to baptism and the new life in baptism, which suggests the letter was intended for the newly baptized. Certainly, it is a very appropriate letter for those newly received into the church to read, but there is much in here for all Catholics. When the letter was written, Christianity was a minor sect in a pagan world, undergoing much persecution. Within a few years, the author himself would be crucified. And accordingly, the text exhorts the audience to be brave and stalwart in the face of this persecution. There is a central theme we can take from it, and the letter is especially powerful for new Christians who are stepping into a very hostile world with their new white garments. A word should be said about chapter 3, verses 18 to 20. It's here we find the doctrine of the harrowing of hell, something which is expressed in the Apostles' Creed as he, that is Christ, descended into hell. Now, there's much confusion concerning this teaching. Different Christian sects have many different ideas about what it means, and there is confusion even among Catholics. It's not directly related to the content of the first letter of St. Peter, but I have included some additional resources to help you better understand the doctrine of the harrowing of hell and explain it to others. That's all for this week. Do read the first letter of St. Peter, and if you know someone being received into the church or undergoing some kind of persecution, do point them in the direction of this letter. Next time, we'll be taking a look at the second letter of St. Peter. Until then, I'm Simon Rafe, and God bless. To learn more about the place of Scripture in the lives of Catholic Christians, I urge you to read Pope Benedict's apostolic exhortation Verbum Domini. The Pope encourages all Catholics to read, learn and love Scripture and to understand its relation to the Church. A link to this exhortation is included in the reading materials for every episode of Brown Bag Bible Study. Just click the link over there.